Everybody, thanks for joining in today. We're going to give folks just another minute or so to get settled in, and then we'll get started. Thanks. All right, great, everybody. Thanks again for joining us today. We're going to be talking about Edelweiss Analytics, specifically for our librarian users. Some of you on the call, I believe, are current users, and some of you may be prospective users or just people who are curious. Let's kind of give you a quick background of where we're coming from and what we're talking about today. So we are above the tree line. That's the name of the company. And then we have Edelweiss and Edelweiss Analytics, our products. And basically, we've been working since the early aughts, since the early 2000s, to help the book industry, whether it's publishers, retailers, librarians, reviewers, etc. We are based in Ann Arbor, Michigan. It's a cool town. But we are most well known for our for Edelweiss itself. It's a book industry's platform where publishers essentially post their digital catalogs, usually front list. But because it's where most of the publishing world spends most of their time nowadays, it does a lot of stuff. And so we're going to cover a little bit of that today. We have tons and tons of users, from librarians to booksellers to reviewers and bloggers to, of course, the publishers themselves, and then all the back end stuff that goes along with the publishers themselves, marketing and publicity and editorial and sales and all that fun stuff. That can be relatively complicated at times, I think. But again, so the tools do kind of a lot of stuff, and we have been building or have built analytics tools into Edelweiss itself, so you can use Edelweiss for title discovery, and then also to analyze your collections and kind of do some weeding and kind of do all that in one kind of safe, useful spot. People do ask why I need analytics, which I always find particularly surprising, because to me it's relatively obvious, but I'm kind of deep in it all the time. Really, the idea behind it is, I think that if you are unable to measure something, then you're likely to be unable to fix it. And that's actually where above the tree line, I just did air quotes, which you cannot see, but that's where that name comes from. There's actually, I live in Colorado. I'm a remote employee of the company, but there's a saying here, when you're up in the mountains, when in doubt, go higher, because once you go up high enough, you're able to see farther, and you can kind of get a gauge on where you are and what's happening around you and that sort of stuff. So, kind of get out from the trees and see much, much farther. And so there's obviously a metaphor there for seeing the forest for the trees and all that fun stuff. The idea here with the Edelweiss Analytics tools for librarians is to simplify your collection management tools. So we allow you to leverage data from both library users and retailers. So we've been doing retail analytics for a long, long time now, and you're able to take advantage of some of that and see what's happening in the retail world, and it's kind of a unique view into the marketplace, so to speak. And of course, you want to be able to stay a step ahead of trends, and there are tools that allow you to do that. as well as see what's happening among your different branches and react accordingly to that sort of thing. And the bottom one there, I think, is the clearest advantage, is that you're doing this work on a tool that allows you to discover those new titles that you may be missing or that you had no idea even existed. That sort of stuff, you can just kind of grab it all in the same spot. So for today's demo, we're going to be doing a really, really brief tour of Edelweiss Plus, just so you kind of get an idea of what environment this is that you're working in. And then we're going to do an overview of the tools available in analytics. Now, you guys are muted for the webinar here, just because it can get kind of chaotic with people yelling questions, or there's always that one person whose dog is barking, or they're eating a bag of Sun Chips but not muted or something. So we're avoiding that. But there is a Q&A tool there in the webinar tools there, and my colleague Ruth is going to be on the other end answering those. And Ruth is actually the project manager for the analytics tools, so she's wicked smart. Then, of course, you can always ask us questions later on or at any time at support@abovethetreeline.com. And there are people standing by to help you. And of course, we do have help documentation within for these tools. There's a URL there to find those, but you can find those from within the analytics tools themselves. And I'll make sure that I point that out once we're in those tools too. And again, thank you for joining in today. And we're going to go ahead and just dive right into the tools here. So hopefully you can see my Edelweiss screen now. So again, we're going to do kind of a quick overview of what Edelweiss Plus is, and just a little bit about navigating around, and just to make sure that you kind of understand the, oh, sorry. It's never as smooth as I want it to be. There we go. All right. So just to make sure that you understand where you're looking, the kind of tools that are available to you and that sort of thing. So essentially, again, this is the homepage where when you first log into Edelweiss, you're going to see kind of a various widgets. So the homepage is kind of a nice thing where you can come in and customize this to look how you want it to look. So right now, this is kind of a nice slim view for someone who's doesn't have a whole lot of activity in here, but you can add, we call them widgets, these little guys. You can move them around and have stuff look how you want them to look. But you can click on add widget and add out all kinds of stuff, whether it's your collections and folders and bookmarked catalogs, or review copies that you can download right this minute, or you can see your requests. You can look at a widget that just shows your shelves or your tags, and we'll go a little bit more into what those things are. But basically, you can just click on one of those and they'll show up over here, and then you can move them around the homepage here, so everything's organized how you like. But again, essentially, so this is where publishers post their catalogs, and it's generally seasonal catalogs. So you're kind of looking at like front list catalogs, front list being, of course, titles that are not published yet. And essentially, this is where publishers sell their titles. So we're showing stuff like way, way, way in advance, which can really help you get ahead of things. And again, so you don't want to spend the entire time doing collection development just reacting to things. It can be really nice to get ahead of those things and ahead of patron demand and that sort of stuff. And you can really surprise people just by being super on top of it. And that's the idea here. So for example, like right now, there are a lot of summer catalogs. So right now the summer season is being bought and sold. But you can also, now if you're into free books, which I assume you might be, there's also review copies. So again, since this is where a lot of the publishing world spends their time. Publishers really like to also provide digital review copies or e-galleys. So you can come in here and see what's available. And right now, I believe I'm sorted by the date added. So all the most recent stuff is going to be right up at the top. And when you're looking through here, you'll see a request or a download option here. When you first log in, you may actually see it in a 2-column view. There are different views that you can look at here. So kind of facilitates a quicker scroll through the list of titles. But essentially, again, looking and seeing what publishers are offering, seeing stuff that's looks interesting to you. Been hearing good things about that one, actually. Anyways, you can apply filters here. You can look at different things. So right now we're looking at all available digital review copies. You can look at stuff that's you can just download right this minute. And you just click here and you'll have the choice between standard or Kindle, and there's different protocols for each of those. But since we offer digital review copies, we also offer the means to write reviews. So you can review a title. There's just a little slider from 0 to 10 here. You give that guy a 9. You can write your review. You can choose if you like to rate the writing quality, images and illustrations and that sort of stuff. Write an actual text review, and then from here you can submit that review to the publisher and also to Library Reads, which is a great program. So this is where you can do that nomination for the Library Reads program, basically. And I always like to mention as well here that you don't have to write a review to nominate titles for Library Reads. You can just do exactly what we have here and click save, and that'll be essentially a vote for this title for Library Reads. So it can be very, very nice and easy. And to submit this, you simply click save. Now, since we provide, there's the digital review copies, there's the means to do reviews, there's also shelves in here. You can kind of track your reading here. We kind of aggregate all that information as well in the Buzz tab here. And this is kind of where you can go and outside of the analytics stuff, you can dive in here and see what are those most popular titles among other book professionals. And you can sort this by buzz, ascending or descending. So this Matt Haig is actually getting a lot of play here. 68 much loves, which is basically you click the little heart here, and it automatically gives a title rating of 9. So kind of a nice and easy way to go ahead and tell people that you're enjoying a title. To do the Library Reads thing, you do still want to pop in and submit that though. So again, just kind of a cool way to see what's happening around the market, and this is a great way to see those pre-publication titles. So essentially stuff that's very popular before it's even been published, and again, that's really among other book professionals, which can be I don't know, if you're an elitist like I am, you might lend that a little more weight than you would otherwise. So right now we're looking at a full view display, and there's also that 2-column view, so you can scroll through stuff pretty easily. You can also do a grid view for people who kind of prefer to work in DOS. Sometimes I see. There's also, and this is kind of one place where analytics exists outside of the analytics tools proper. You can look at the same list of titles with a collection analysis view. So those titles that are really popular amongst your colleagues, and then this graph is portioned out according to how these titles are performing at your library. So like the green are titles that are moving really well, the yellow are titles that are on order, The blue here are titles that are owned but not moving all that well, and then of course the red titles would be titles that you do not own. So you can look at any list of titles anywhere on the site and with that analytical view in here. And I'll get into that a little bit more. But I do want to point out as well, so we have the various ways to look at titles, but you can also of course create orders here, and then you can take those orders and export them to Baker and Taylor or iPage if you like. It's a really nice and easy way to do that. And the best way, because we're not really going to get into how to order today, but you can click on help here and it'll take you to, if you click on get help, it'll take you to some help documentation that I'll actually walk you through all that sort of thing. But more and more library systems are doing that just because it's like a nice, easy way to keep track of your ordering and that sort of stuff. So that's kind of a really, really rough overview of Edelweiss in general and the environment where the analytics tools live. But to get to those analytics tools, you simply click on analytics up here at the top. So within this screen, there's lots of different tools to look at. We're going to go over each one relatively briefly. We don't want to bore you to death right now. But I do want to point out, if you click on the tools icon up at the very top here, you'll see this analytics option here. And you can basically come in and organize your analytics screen. So you can say which tools are going to be where, which ones are on top, usually those ones that you use the most. I actually come in and I make sure that this looks how I want it to look before every demo, because this is one that we share and other people, move their stuff around, but I'm very particular about where my tools are. I want to point out one more thing here as well. There's this Ingram iPage link here. If you click in there, you can basically link your iPage account directly to your Edelweiss account here, which means that you'll be able to really easily create Ingram selection lists, which is a great way to really, really speed up that buying process. So you see a list of titles, you click the tools to get to the selection list, and it sends it right into iPage, where you can probably do a lot of your ordering. Really, really handy stuff. And you'll also, you have this show a link to iPage detail pages. I'll show you once we get into the list here. You'll be able to click on a title and see, it'll take you right to the iPage detail page, where you'll see all that really good, rich iPage information about that particular title, including the warehouses, stock levels, and that sort of stuff. So basically what we're going to do is kind of work our way down the tools here. It's kind of a nice and easy progression. The first thing I want to point out, though, is that you can choose to view all of your locations if you're a multi-branch library system, or you can look branch to branch, and you can also apply saved filters to any lane in here. Saved filters are a tool used all throughout Edelweiss, and it's really a nice and quick way to really narrow down your view. So we have a bunch of recently used filters here. I created a filter is just going to show me kids stuff. There's one for historical fiction. So these are all ones that I've created. You can also come in here and just look at kind of preset genre filters. So if you just want to see cooking books and that sort of stuff. And there's my save filters. To create a filter, you click on add new filter. And then you get quite a few different options. Edelweiss vendor is going to be the umbrella publisher, Random House versus Crown or Knopf. But you can set filters according to publication dates, by Zach subject, or, and I should point out here, you can really dig in here. So like for fiction, you can come in here and click this little arrow. It'll expand the the genre stuff there. For example, if we go to mystery, you can dive into that as well. So if you want to just see cozy mysteries, you can totally do that. Like so. And then to actually create a filter, you just name it and save it. And then that filter will be available for you in your saved filters here. Like so. So again, whenever you create or select a save filter to use, it's going to update all the lanes here so you can just dive into that particular subject. And of course you can, when you create a filter, you can also use your own collection codes, the different sorts of classifications that you sent to us. I think I just clicked like 40 different things, so it needs a little break here. So whenever you send us your feeds, those feeds are going to be essentially mapped however you want them to be mapped, really. And so we're going to see collection codes, or if you have item type, or it's really just kind of however you're used to classifying your titles. So you can view this page through your specific collection codes. That's what I'm trying to say. And then to clear out a filter, you just go like so. So those two things, the location and the filter, again, really apply all throughout this page and all throughout all the tools. So those are important ones to wrap your head around. But this, the most popular titles lane here is really kind of a handy thing. And it's really, I don't know if you want to say it's the sexiest part of the tools. It's just kind of the more exciting. You can go out and see what's popular, what am I missing, what should I bring in, that sort of stuff. So right now we have some pretty exacting parameters here. So we're looking at the market that we're looking at for the the bestseller, or the and so if you choose libraries, you can see the best circulating. But basically we're looking at the best moving titles within the specific marketplace. And the time frame is really important. Right now we're looking at a current month, so we're seeing titles that are they're hot right now. And you can look back over the course of a year. I really like looking at the current month, just because it's just showing like these are the titles that are hot and moving right this minute. And then you can look at from 50 to 1,000 titles. I like 200, just a nice and clean and svelte list of titles. And then you can look at minimum copies on hand. I usually like to keep that at 0. And then this activity index takes a little bit of explanation, but basically it's taking the number of copies on hand multiplied by day since last activity. Last activity is really going to be when it was checked out or returned. So those titles that are moving for you right now would be considered fresh, and I'll talk about that once we get into the graph here. And you can select a threshold for how long a title can sit with before going stale as well in here. So really the most common, this is the default here, is 90 in a year. So really this is saying that one copy can sit on the shelf for 90 days without moving and still be considered fresh. Whereas if it's sitting on the shelf for over a year, then it's going to be considered stale. And again, that's going to really, really stress the number of copies on hand. So if you have 10 copies that you own, they're sitting on the shelf in a stack and they haven't moved in a month, then they're basically, you're looking at an activity index number of 300, which is one that you need to pay attention to essentially. I'm going to save that. All right, so again, we're looking at right now the top 200 titles that have been selling across the indie trade market for the last month. And then that's represents all 200 titles within this graph. And the graph itself is portioned out according to how those titles are performing in your library. And in this case, in the main branch. So the green titles are moving. You know, they have a decent amount of activity at your library system. This light blue are going to be titles that are stable. They haven't moved in a little while. You can see these numbers down here at the bottom. It's like Lilac Girls, one on hand, hasn't been checked out for 301 days. So it has that index number of 301. You see how those are playing out. Like this, You Are a Badass, 2 copies, hasn't moved in 129 days. So it gives it a 258 score there. And you'll see some stale titles here. So again, among the top moving titles for retailers, these 2 titles are not moving at this particular library branch, even though they're awesome. I love both of these books, which is irrelevant, but important to me. But you can see the numbers here and how they are playing out. And then, of course, these red titles are going to be titles that this branch does not own. So it could be titles that you don't want to own, or ones that you missed, or simply ones that are not owned by this particular branch. I can actually change this to all locations, and that'll change this graph a bit. So really what we're looking for here are really those gaps. You know, you want to look at the titles that you're missing for the most part. And this is something that I generally recommend you look at least once every couple of weeks, just to make sure you're not out of something big. You don't want to, again, just be chasing things all the time. That can be kind of exhausting when frankly, it feels pretty good when you're ahead of the curve. This one's been getting a lot of action lately, actually. Looks great. But whenever you click into a title, you can click on the cover here, and you'll go to the title detail page here, where you can see the summary, a little bit about the author. This is all publisher generated information. So, you know, whenever they catalog titles, this is the stuff that they're adding in here. You can look at your ILS copy detail, and also what I like is this wholesaler info. We'll show you, where this is in stock between Baker and Taylor and Ingram, and at which warehouses. And sometimes it takes a bit to load because there is a feed that comes in from those guys. I'm going to let that go there. So there's B&T and Ingram, the Tennessee warehouse has 240 copies, 254. And you can see when that feed came through. And then you can click on this icon, this View as List icon. And you'll see a lot more information about this list of titles. So you'll see a little reminder here of which market you're looking at. And then this is market activity for these titles. So you can see it's on top, it's percentage of peers that have circulated or sold a title, and underneath is the total items that have sold. So 62% of the indie marketplace, the retail marketplace, has sold this title for 3,500 copies. This is what the percentage of them that have it on hand, and then how many total on hand, and then the ordered here, percentage appears on order, and then there's a total number of items order, and then the average order. So the ordered stuff is mostly relevant for, like not yet released titles, but it can be kind of fascinating to dig through there. And then the information over here is going to be for the particular branch that you're looking at. In this case, it's all locations. So this is the activity index number that we talked about. And then holds ratio, circulation numbers, on hand, the on orders and on order gap from the average order, and then a call number and that sort of stuff. So if these items are not owned by this particular library system, so there's no call number and that sort of stuff. But you can come in here and click on sort, and you can sort by any of those columns. It's automatically going to be sorted by that activity index number. And there are a lot of other actions that you can perform in here. So you can select all titles on this list. You can create collections. So collections are essentially kind of custom catalogs within Edelweiss. So you can kind of set aside lists of titles to use however you like later on. You can send emails, create PDFs of this title. You can export to file. So if we select all of these, I can actually export this list to an Excel sheet. There's an iPage format. If you like, there's also an E+ Analytics format, which is going to provide all the information that's in the list, this title detail list that we've been looking at. You can also export an order form if you like. What's great as well is you can come in and add to Ingram selection list. And so this will add all of these titles that are in the list that you selected, and you can select or unselect titles with the check marks there. And you simply name the selection list, add a note to it if you like, and then you create it, and it's going to create a new selection list within iPage. So it can really speed that process up. You can also click on this guy to go see. I think I forgot to log in before. Oh no, I'm good. So this will take you to that Ingram's iPage title detail page. And they do a really, really great job with providing reviews and that sort of stuff. So that can be really helpful. And again, from here, you can, if you click on the title, you'll be able to see more information about this particular title, and you can add it to an Ingram selection list from there and that sort of thing. But I also want to point out from here, you can add this list of titles to an action plan, which is basically, within the Edelweiss Analytics tools, is a way for you to store your work that you've been doing. So, in the active discovery of titles that may be missing here, we may have found 20 or 30 titles that we want to order. So you can actually add those to an action plan. You click on that, and you're going to see the list of titles that you have here, and you can choose from a existing action plan, or you can create a new plan, and then you name it. And you can choose this to be a purchase plan, a retire plan if you're doing weeding, or a transfer plan if you're wanting to move titles from one branch to another. I'm going to say purchase here, and then you can choose a number of units per each. Usually it's just one for now, just to get them on the list. And then you can write a note here explaining what the heck you were thinking 2 days ago when you created this list. But what's nice is that once you add this plan, you're going to be able to use it later on. So as you're scrolling around through the different lists of titles and you'll see in gaps and that sort of stuff, you can go ahead and just throw those titles as you go onto an action plan. And then we're going to talk about that towards the end, what you do with those action plans. So I'm going to close this down. To close down the title detail list, you click on that guy. And one thing that's really nice is you can set this up as you like. So if you apply a saved filter, click into the piece of pie here that you're interested in, and you can select the envelope here and create an email. So essentially you can make the analytics tools come to you or to a colleague, frankly. Like you can come in and say, I think Joe needs to get this, not daily, because that's kind of mean. It's a little overkill, but like once a month, let's look at these titles that we're missing that are the most popular titles among this market. So all the parameters that you set here will feed into this report here. So when you save it, you can actually come in and look at the subscriptions and edit that as you like, or you can send a test email to yourself to see what it's going to look like. But it's going to send an email to that person or to you, given in this time frame with the frequency that you've selected, and you'll be able to see analytic information about each of those titles and a link to that title in Edelweiss, and just really, really handy stuff. And you can do that with most of the tools in the analytics stuff here. Highly recommend that you create some and then remember how to delete them, because you're probably going to create too many, because it is easy to get kind of overzealous with that. But you can, again, you can just come in here to current subscriptions and delete that if you like. And if you want more information about the each of these lanes, you can just click on that little question mark there, and it'll take you right to a help document that explains all the nuances and details of it. So we covered quite a bit with that one, because it was the first one, the first tools, and so we're not going to have to get into the title detail list with each of these lanes. So the rest of them are going to go a little bit quicker than that. We're kind of working on essential knowledge there. Well, the next one down is not yet released, is a really handy one. This is kind of a great way to get ahead again of that demand and present your patrons with those titles that they didn't know that they wanted. The new Paul Auster, for example, and just new titles that they're going to be excited about. One thing to keep in mind is you can view these lists, including the most popular here, using the ISBN or the family view. So the ISBN view, for example, in the most popular titles is going to show you, the specific ISBNs, the specific editions of a title that are the most popular right now. So that can be really useful in some instances, and others you may not care which edition you have as long as you have an edition. For example, if there's a new version of The Great Gatsby that's out that's selling really well, and you have 15 other editions of The Great Gatsby, then you don't necessarily need to pay attention to the newest one. But in that case, you can look at the family view here. Before I do, I just want to point out, so this yellow are titles that this library system has on order, and I did set a time frame here. So right now we're looking at a pub date range of February 1st to February 28th, and so essentially titles that come out next month. And then these red are titles that are not owned, and so those are ones, frankly, that you want to pay attention to. They're very popular pre-publication around the marketplace, and you may have missed them or may not know that they're coming. And keep in mind too, so right now we're looking at the indie trade market. You can look at the library market as well. That being said, a lot of library systems have trouble getting us their order information, so it may not be quite as rich as the retail market, just to make sure that you understand that. All right, so if we look at the family information here, that's essentially going to just show us, if one of the most popular order titles is a paperback of a title that came out in hardcover last year, that won't show up as not owned in your list if you do have that hardcover, if that makes sense. So this is a really great way to look at it to really catch those titles that you truly are missing. New Willie Vlotton is always exciting. The guy's great. But you can come in here, and when you're looking at the family view, if you look at the title detail list, it's going to look quite a bit different because we're basically sorting all these different titles out by their versions. So for example, the new Paul Auster, there are 2 versions. A mass market and a trade there. So you can see, ordered information for each one. There's not going to be a whole lot of sold or stocked information on the not yet released because, of course, those titles oftentimes are not out yet. Let's see if there's a good one here. There's the King in Yellow. So you can see there's older versions of this that, frankly, don't have a whole lot of activity around the marketplace. So just different ways of looking at the same sort of information. So those 2 tools, the most popular and the not yet released, are really kind of the market comparison type tools. The next one that we're going to look at is the collection analysis. So this is kind of where you can get your report card. So again, right now we're looking at all locations. I am going to bump that. Let's just look at the West branch for now. And I am going to take, I'm going to apply a saved filter here as well. So you'll notice when you scroll down, that location and the filter guide just kind of stays up there at the top. So you can come in here, click apply save filter. I'm going to say kids. I want to see how my kids titles are doing. Sometimes when you apply a filter, especially one of those bigger filters, it can take it just a little bit to load everything up. So again, those activity index numbers play a big role in here. The green are going to be those titles that are moving really well at this particular branch. And then the lighter blue are going to be those titles that are owned and are doing okay. They're not anything to really worry about yet. These bright blue are going to be those cool titles that have larger activity index numbers, whether because there's a stack of them that haven't moved in a while or just they haven't been checked out in a while in general. And then those yellow that you see in here are going to be titles that are on order. You're really not going to see any red in here because, again, this is analyzing your collection. So it can be really great to come in and see, the percentages themselves of, right now we're looking at kids titles. And so we can see that 20% of all the kids titles are doing pretty well. There's some good recent activity, but we're looking at almost 50% of the collection is stale. So that's worth paying attention to. And those are potentially, there's a weeding tool in here, but these are titles that are potential weeding victims as well. So kind of a different way of looking at that sort of thing. You can see the index number for this one is over 20,000. It's pretty big. Last checked in 1989. There's 2 copies. I do like that book though. I read that recently with my daughter. But again, kind of a nice way to view things here. And you can come in here and look at that title detail list again. And if this is something that you want to analyze for weeding, you can come in and just look at last activity dates. You can sort the whole list by activity index, that sort of stuff. Or you can come in, select all the titles. There's a chunk of them, and then you can add these to an action plan as well. Again, in this case, we had one that was for purchasing. Now we're going to create one that's more for buying, or I'm sorry, the opposite of that, more for weeding. So you follow the same sort of protocol where you can create a new plan or add to an existing plan. And then you give a rationale for that, for your selections if you like. So it can be a nice and easy way to find those titles that are in need of attention, really. And again, you can set a email subscription to that list of titles as well. So you can say, once a month or something, show me all the, cozy mysteries that have an index number that makes them stale, essentially. So show me all the titles in this particular genre that I should maybe get rid of. The next one down is the historical overview. So this is kind of a really quick visual way to look at your collection. And again, according to location or branch and whatever save filter you have selected there. So you can see the red line is the last 12 months and the blue line is the 12 months before that. So we're looking at a couple years worth of circulation here, kind of the highs and lows and the what have yous of each of those. If you click on a month, you'll be able to see what exactly is happening within that particular month. And that's by clicking on the view as list here. You'll see some details there. You can also see your total holdings of those particular titles based on that filter as well. So again, really more than anything else, just like a nice visual view of some trends that are happening. The next one, I'm actually going to clear out filters here. This one, the category performance comparison, is actually my favorite tool out of all of these. It's definitely one that's initially kind of confusing to look at. So we're going to spend a little bit of time on it. So essentially, this is a way for you to look at your entire collection based on a couple of different lenses. So right now we're looking at BISAC, which are those a really strong way to look at different genres, but you can also look at your collection codes, for example, or if you want to look at Dewey, you see how your collection kind of falls out according to Dewey selection. So you have the size of the collection is on the horizontal here. So the smaller portions of the collection are on the left, your larger collections are on the right, and then circulations on the vertical. So lower circulating on the bottom, higher circulating on the top. So kind of what's happening here are over in the red are those Dewey classifications that are basically overstocked. They're pretty big and they're not circulating as well as some of your other categories. Conversely, the yellow ones are going to be relatively smaller collections that are circulating pretty well. So they're potential growth opportunities, or they may just be absolutely perfect. And it kind of depends on what they are. These numbers here represent the number of categories that land in each of these little quadrants here. But I actually really like to look at this with BISAC, because again, the genre stuff within BISAC is really strong. So it's going to portion it out like so. You can scroll through and look at the different categories here. And if you want to look at deeper categories, actually looking for one here, I think. So I want to look at fiction. So if you click into fiction, what's pretty cool is that actually creates a temporary category filter that filters all the tools on the entire page. And that also is going to explode all the genres of fiction out according to how they're performing at your library. So we can see that in this case, fantasy is very overstocked as well as science fiction, which is easy to happen because there's so many very, very large series in there. The 20-book fantasy series that took 30 years to write. Within that as well, we can look at science fiction and click in there as well. So again, that creates a temporary filter and it explodes your entire science fiction collection out according to their different subgenres. If you click on the view as list icon here, you're going to get a breakdown of how those play out for you. In a second. Sorry, it's needing just a minute here. Well, it's great. Again, you can really dig deep, deep, deep into your collection and see what's happening there and how things are performing in comparison to your other parts of your collection and just kind of really dig in there. And the idea here is that you're looking for areas that are overstocked, and then you can scroll up and you'll look at a collection analysis and see stuff that could go away and also stuff that you might be missing. So you can get rid of dead stock and replace it with stuff that people want, which is not a terrible goal, I think. So again, that's definitely one of my favorite graphs. Just there's a lot of power there. You can really kind of decipher stuff that you may not be able to otherwise. The next guy down is a peer comparison. So this allows you to compare your, this particular branch. So again, right now we're looking at the west branch of this particular library system, and we're going to compare it to the Riverside County Public Library. And you can choose from among your peers here. And there's also a peer selector. I'm going to go to the top real quick. You click into the tools icon. You can choose which peers should show up in that list. And so we can click into Finney County Public Library in Colorado, or that's Kansas, it looks like, and say add as peer, and they'll show up in the list over here. And you can remove, if you don't want to see Lafayette anymore, you can remove them as well, for example. But then those show up in that peer comparison here. And really what we're looking at here are titles that this library system has that this branch does not. And really what we want to see are those ones that they're doing really well with. We don't really care what they're bombing with and stuff that they should probably, we want to see what we're missing. And oftentimes, obviously, looking at a library that's close to you, is regionally appropriate, that sort of thing makes a lot of sense. The location comparison is a similar view, but based on your own branches. So we were just comparing west to west, but now we're going to compare the west branch to the main branch. And this is where you can really easily find those titles that could maybe be moved to another branch. They may perform better there, whether it's because they're doing great in one place, so maybe they'll do great in another, or maybe if they're bombing in one place and you kind of think that they might do better at a different branch. It kind of depends on how probably which category we're looking at, and that kind of stuff. Again, really, I think the absolute best way to do this use this particular tool is to look at a good saved filter. So you can really dive in and see, political science titles, for example. Then once we load that list, and we can click into the title detail list and see the actual list of titles, and you can create an action plan based on those titles to transfer to another branch, or really whatever makes the most sense for the work that you're doing. And once we're comparing branches to branches and that sort of stuff, this lane can take a minute or so to load. But since we're running a little shy on time, I'm going to scroll down to this guy. So this is a location performance comparison, which essentially takes whatever filter you're looking at and shows you how each of your branches is performing with those particular titles. So we can see that the main branch you consider overstocked, whereas the East branch would be understocked. So maybe they could use an influx of titles, or if they're actually turning things pretty well. They have a turn of 1, whereas the main branch turn of 0.37, which is not super great. But you can see the percentage of the total circulation that this each branch represents, and the total percentage of the collection that it represents, and then again that annual turnover number. So it's that extra level of information that helps you make those more informed decisions about such things. We're going to dive into the catalog analysis. I'd created a custom catalog earlier of kids' Valentine's titles. Right now we're looking at political science, so not a whole lot of kids' Valentine's titles with a political science bent to them, so we're going to clear that out. So what's cool about this, so there's the catalog analysis, which can be really useful. You can basically create a collection of any titles that you like and basically apply a measurement to them. But that's actually duplicated using what we showed you earlier. So I'm going to click into tags here. So you can really view any list of titles with a collection analysis lens. So I created a historical fiction display. So these were historical fiction titles that were put on a display, and then we can measure how those titles did. And that's going to be according to whatever time frame you select, that sort of stuff. Coming soon is a way to select a specific time frame rather than just a number of months back to look. But you can really see, within here, which titles have done really well, which ones are not moving at all, and how effective was this display, for example. So kind of a nice thing. Again, if you are not able to measure something, you're not able to fix it. So you can measure the effectiveness of displays and how they affect circulation and that sort of stuff. I'm going to jump real quick into the weeding stuff here. So we talked about using the collection analysis to see those titles that are stale and could probably use some weeding or some thinning out at least. The weeding tool is designed specifically to show you titles that need to go away. You can set different parameters here by clicking on that guy, the gear. Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. But basically, you come in here and you set parameters for each of these of your collection codes. That's what we selected here. So we can say titles are potentially worn after 100 checkouts, poorly circulating after a year and a half with 0 checkouts, and then outdated after a number of years. I'm going to bump those up just a little bit. So we set default parameters, and then we can come in here and override those parameters according to kind of whatever makes the most sense to what we're doing. We have the print there. We can come in and expand that. Say adult print, adult fiction, and say for fantasy, we're going to change these. So kind of whatever makes the most sense to how your circulations work. Obviously, something like kids' board books are going to be able to be checked out many fewer times than adult history titles. So you would change the potentially worn numbers for each of those. And then you come in and you select a particular filter. Come in and say fantasy, since we talked about it earlier. And it's going to create a list, and it's going to be based on the rationale of either poor circulation or potentially worn. And then you can come in and say, these all definitely look weedable to me after looking at the information in there. And then you can add these to an action plan. I'm going to say create new plan. And then you basically rinse and repeat. So you're looking around for titles that could go away. Maybe that they're with those titles within a particular portion of the collection that you're responsible for, etc. Then you create an action plan that you can then take action on later on. Oops, sorry. I'm gonna jump back to a different page here. Then there are action plans here as well. Clear these out. So when you have an action plan, you can sort and filter and search for these. So we can say, show me all the action plans that Tom has created, that sort of thing. So you can have as many of these open as you like, and they can be really easy to search and sort through. But if we want to look at the order these very soon action plan that we created earlier, simply click in here, and you can choose to send these, create an Ingram selection list if you like, or you can download them to a spreadsheet, or in the example of a weeding plan, which are titles that you do actually own, you can open a print view. It's going to have a convenient barcode. It's going to help you find those titles as you like, and you can sort these according to their call number if you like, or an author, or however, whatever's the easiest way for you or whoever's actually doing the weeding here to figure these out. So kind of a quick and dirty rundown of the action plans and the weeding tools there. Yeah, and I do want to point out again, at any time, if you want to find more information about a particular tool, you can click on that little question mark, and it's going to take you right to the help documents that explain how to use that, how to read the graph, how to read the chart, the why of it, for example. Yeah, so lots of help available for you. And of course, you can always contact us as well at support@abovethetreeline.com, and we're there to help you out. If you're not an analytics user and you would like to be, if you email us at sales@abovethetreeline.com or contact your Ingram rep, and they should be able to help you get hooked in as well. Thank you, guys. I'm going to close it down, but I'm going to keep it open a little bit in case there are questions that are waiting to be answered. And thanks a lot for joining us today. Have a great afternoon.